Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to Thriving, Not Surviving. My name's Anne-Marie Canning. I am the Director of Social Mobility and Student Success at King's College London, and that means I have responsibility for both bringing students to King's to benefit from our education, but also to help them really make the most of their time at the institution. But tonight's an event that brings together both staff and students, so it'd be really interesting to get a quick show of hands. How many of you are a staff member at King's College London? Wow, brilliant, lots of you, excellent. How many of you are an undergraduate student? Fantastic. How many of you are a postgraduate student? Whoa, loads of postgrads, excellent. How many of you are a first year? Ooh, a few of you. Second year? And how about the final years, 3+? Okay, great, really fantastic mix of people. Have we got any academics? No academics. They're definitely already thriving, that's fine. Okay, so you guys have done something which is really impressive. When people enter a space like a lift or a lecture theatre, they find the most mathematically effective way to sit as far away from each other as possible to get as much personal space. So before I introduce our speaker, I'd like you to turn to the person nearest to you and introduce yourself. Tell them your name, your course or the thing that you're studying, and where you're from. So 30 seconds, let's do that now. This is working. Okay, I'll bring you back together. This is excellent. I like it when people won't stop talking. That's really the point of this evening. This evening is about bringing people together to connect with each other. This lecture series will run over the course of the year, and it's really about helping you to make the best of your time at King's and in the rest of your life, really. Because we think that being at King's, enjoying life in London is not just about getting by. It's actually about maximising your time and really making sure you're enjoying it to the utmost that you can. So this evening, we've got someone to share their story with you. Fadela Hilali is a coach. She is an author. She's also a King's graduate, excitingly, and she's going to be sharing her own story and some of the tips she has for really making the most of your time, both at the university and outside of it as well. If I can encourage you to do one thing going away from today, it's to continue having conversations and connecting with people. It is genuinely true that stories are really the lifeblood of being a human being, and the more we connect with each other as part of our campus community, the more we will be able to help each other to really excel. So without further ado, thank you so much to Fadela. I'd like to introduce her to you as your speaker tonight.
Thank you. So as you all know by now, my name is Fadela, and I am a coach and a speaker. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm the founder of a tech startup, and I also do some consulting with social enterprises and charities. The reason I'm sharing this is because there's a lot going on. My journey was not linear, far from it. So as far as coaching goes, my job is essentially to work with my clients to understand the thoughts, patterns, beliefs that keep getting in their way, that keep them feeling empty. So that's what I do. And you'd be amazed that, some of the issues my clients in their 50s face are pretty similar to some of my younger clients, or even issues I faced myself, both as a student, as a young professional, or even as an entrepreneur today. One of the first things I wanted to get out of the way before we get started is my accent. So it's a little bit weird. I mean, I get confused sometimes as well. So it's a bit of a hybrid. I'm from Morocco. I grew up bilingual, Arabic and French, and I studied in the US, lived in Spain, and now I'm here. So don't let it distract you. It's okay. But I'm not here, obviously, to talk about languages or where I've lived. And in fact, like, I'm not here to tell you about this, hardship I've experienced or this transformational journey I've had. I mean, I don't know anything about you guys. I don't know you. I didn't grow up in the same town. I didn't have the same friends. I didn't have the same set of parents. I mean, I don't know what it feels like to be you. The only thing that I can share is the experience of me. Like, I'm an expert on me. And what I would like you, one of the things I would like you to take away from today is just to learn how to become an expert on your life. And that is something you take away, in your studies and beyond that. And I can say, and I'm very proud of this, that I'm finally very good at being me. I know you're probably thinking, well, duh. No. It was not easy. It was not graceful. I didn't like myself for a very long time. I didn't know who I was for a very long time. So this is quite exciting to be standing here comfortably sharing my experience because I know now. So to give you a little bit of background, I grew up in Morocco. I left when I was 18 after I finished high school. And from there, I moved to South Carolina in the US, Charleston. And I did my undergraduate there. So I studied economics and Spanish. Why? No idea. I had no clue. It sounded like a solid, respectable combo. So that's what I went for. My parents were okay with it, so hello. I mean, they were paying for my studies, so why not? So that's what I did. Towards the end, so the degree was 4 years. Towards the end of my degree, I started to notice that I had an interest in international affairs, that I was very keen to volunteer. I was volunteering a group of young girls at risk. And I thought, okay, we might be onto something here. I mean, when I was little, I thought I was going to work for the UN. I was just like, maybe this is coming back. This is good. So I worked for a couple of months after I graduated. And from there, I moved to Barcelona, Spain, to do a master's in international relations. And that was a very good choice. I mean, I don't regret any of my studies. There's been quite a bit. But Spain was a good choice. And from there, again, after I finished, it was really interesting because there were so many different topics. I started to specialize in the Middle East. Again, no-brainer. I'm from Morocco, speak Arabic, like, fine, great. And they had this international affairs think tank that was next door to my school. And every year, they picked 3 graduates to join as research assistants. I mean, I didn't even want to apply for that. I was just like, no way, everyone is applying for this, not a chance. My advisor pushed me, thank you, to apply for one of the positions. It was for the MENA region. And I did get the job, which was really cool. There is no drama involved in this story, not yet anyway. I had a really great boss. He was amazing. He was really well known for what he did. He had a PhD, very supportive. And, you probably have those thoughts now as well, depending on your degree, but like, how often do you get to work in what you studied? I mean, unless you're like in med school or like you're an engineer or an architect, for the rest of us, social sciences, it's very rare. I mean, you can end up in sales, you can end up in, pharmaceuticals, randomly, anything. So that was a very good move for me. But I started to feel a little bit uneasy. So when I started to feel uneasy is essentially when I started to project myself, like what's going to happen next. And my rational mind was following this very structured path. It's like, look, we've got a master's now. We'll move on to a PhD. Like I could already see my name, like Dr. Hilali, like A journals, publishing. Just like, yeah, my parents would be really proud. Like, this is good. Let's do this. But the more I thought about it, the more anxious I felt. And, the problem with that time is that I wasn't able to pinpoint exactly what was wrong with that picture. I just knew something wasn't right. So I did what any rational human being would do. I applied for a second master's here at King's. I mean, I wanted to specialize a little bit more. That's what I told my parents. I think I even believed it at one point. But in reality, as much as I love the degree I did here, which was in conflict, security, and development, I was trying to buy myself some time to figure out what I wanted to do, and that's the truth. So came to London, finished my master's, and by that time, I actually did have more clarity. So I was crystal clear that I would try to work for the not-for-profit. In an ideal world, I would work for the UN. After that, you had Amnesty, and then you had the rest of the charities. So that's how my mind functioned. So for the first couple of months after I graduated, all I did was apply, 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 apply. I didn't get that many interviews, which kind of hurt at the time, but that was okay. Like, I was really, really determined to make it happen. So this takes me to August 2011. And at that time, I finally landed my first charity job. And it was one of those ads that were so obscure. It was 3 lines, poverty busting program officer. I was like, okay, sounds good to me. Studied poverty, let's do it. Got the job. Surprisingly, it was well paid, especially for London. The colleagues were good. And frankly, it was a good cause. You could see what was happening. So all was well for about a month. For about a month, why? Not because, they were scammers or that I realized that they were, not doing what they were advertising to do, but just because, again, I started to feel a little bit uneasy. And again, I wasn't able to pinpoint what was the root cause of that. So I did what I knew best. I started to look for change. So that meant going home every night after a long day and looking and applying for jobs for hours and hours. And that was about, a month after I started. Like, I didn't even let myself relax, put my mug on my desk or anything like that. I was also considering a PhD because, that's the way forward. So I did that. And nothing, like not even an interview. Just like, come on, like surely, like I have a strong CV, like what's going on? And at one point I remember, anytime Amnesty had a job, I would apply for it. I mean, I can only imagine, the poor HR department just going like, no, not her again. Like, what is it? Libya, I'm in. Turkey, I'm in. I was desperate. I was really, really desperate. And it's something that I call today the 4 stages of job disillusion. So at first, you're very excited. You go for an interview. You start a new job. Like it's all the unknown, all the possibilities. Then after that, it's disappointment. You don't get a call back. It's very similar to dating, if you think about it. So you don't get that call back. You wonder what's wrong. Then you move on to anger. Like, who do they think they are? Like, they'd be lucky to have me. I mean, seriously. And then the last stage is self-pity. And that's where, it goes something. I mean, for me, it went something like that. Like, why not me? Why won't they take me? Like, what's wrong with me? And that's how it went. Obviously, today, with my years of wisdom and therapy and coaching, I realized that there was absolutely nothing wrong with that first charity job. In fact, like some of the friends I made, some of them were at King's as well before me, they're still friends today. We have a very strong community still from that workplace. And I had good friends. I had a boyfriend at the time. Like, everything was good. And I even got to a point where I started to wonder, like, maybe I'm just one of those people, Like the ones who moan all the time, just always miserable, like always have a reason to be unhappy about something. I mean, that was a hypothesis that was going strong in my family for sure, because it didn't matter what I did, I was going to find something wrong, and then I was going to be unhappy about it. So I started to do a little bit more reflection because there was only so many charities I could apply for. And even looking at job description, I started to realize that it was a little bit of the same, like same script, different cast. So I was likely to replicate whatever emotions I was having in job 1 into job 2. And then it hit me. I realized that what I'd been doing for 5 years was just going from change to change to change to change. And I never really took the time to slow down, to reflect, or, heavens forbid, to celebrate my accomplishments. Because in my mind, if I stopped, I would become complacent. And I had a strong drive, and I loved my drive. I mean, I'm still ambitious. I still have that drive. But in my mind, there was this, it was almost like a conflicting agenda. Like, how do you navigate the two? But that was the easy answer. That was the obvious answer. What was happening is that I was also seeking things outside of me to validate me. So if I just got that promotion, if I just got a job that paid a little bit more, I would feel better about myself. If I worked for an organization that was a little bit more well-known, more credible, I would be more respected. I would feel more proud of myself. And that went on. If I lost a little bit more weight, I would feel better. And it was always this thing outside that was going to make me be okay. Looking back, I realized that the one common thread throughout all those years, I mean, in fact, I can even trace it back to high school, is not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy. I mean, do you all know what I mean by that? Does it resonate with anyone? Yeah? Okay, I see some nodding. It's okay, no one's seen it. So in those situations, whether you're dealing with feeling unworthy, not good enough, or sometimes you feel like a fraud, like an imposter, there are 2 ways to go about it. Option 1, have a pity party. Seriously, feel very sorry for yourself, blame the world, blame your parents, blame the system, society, your nationality, your religion, whatever. Just blame everything. Like, I was really good at it. I mean, if you need tips on that, by all means. I'm hoping that this isn't your first choice. And option 2 is to actually tap into emotional grit, your resilience, your resourcefulness. And that option is simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. But it does require, a little bit of creativity. It requires stepping out of your comfort zone because we're not used to dealing with it that way. And it does require a sense of humor because, trial and error, some things will work, some things won't. And that's just how it is. And I remember a few years ago, I was already starting to get a little bit interested in personal development, but just, out of personal interest. And I did this meditation course. I thought, look, my mind is so restless. I need something to help me, feel more grounded. And at the time, the meditation teacher said that thoughts weren't really the problem. And I'm thinking, I've been reading some Tony Robbins, and he says that thoughts create your beliefs shape your reality, and how you think affects how you feel, and how you feel, will affect your behaviors, so on and so forth. And that was true because, at the end of the day, if I'm having stressful thoughts, I'm likely to feel stressed. But that meditation course went a little bit beyond that, which was great. And the teacher used the analogy of water. So whether you imagine yourself stepping in a sea, an ocean, a lake, imagine walking into the water and then just kicking the sand at the bottom. Now, it doesn't matter how clear that water was to begin with. The sand will make it look cloudy. It will be murky. And that there's nothing you can do about that. And our mind is a little bit like that water, where when we get bombarded with information, bombarded with thoughts, we start to look like that cloudy water. And what's the best thing to do to get the water to go back to its original state, to become clear again? What's the best thing to do? The what, sorry? Wait, yeah? Yeah, wait, stop. Stop touching the sand. Like, just leave it. It will settle back down. But is that what we do in real life? No. No, we have thoughts. We go into these overthinking loops on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And we're just basically doing this and this, talk to your friend, bring in some more. And we think that's normal. That's how it's meant to be working. When in reality, our thoughts, most of them, are meant to be transient. But what we do is we attach to them. We make them real. We hold on to them. We give them meaning. And that's what creates a lot of that stress, that anxiety. And one of the things that people do, and I mean, I see that with my clients all the time, is trying to add stuff to it, kind of like trying to, drown the thoughts with more stuff. So buy more stuff, do more stuff, see more stuff, learn more stuff. And that doesn't work. And I know that very well because when I was, in a deep struggle with my restlessness and overactive mind, my number one coping mechanism was food. So throughout my time, especially in university, I just ballooned because food was comforting to me. If anything went wrong, food was there, food delivered. If a boy didn't call back, ice cream. Bad grade, chocolate. Hangover, buffet. That's just how it worked. And quite frankly, I mean, I did exercise, and I used to go to the gym, and I had a close group of friends. Nothing could quite top the soothing that I had from food. And that's because, for one, it was distracting. And two, it was also numbing. I remember, going into my room, having my snacks, my sweets, and what have you, and just binge watching and binge eating, watching TV shows. And I did that for years. And the problem with that is that rationally, you know that a behavior like that is going to backfire. You know it. We're all intelligent human beings. We understand basic nutrition. It just doesn't add up. So what then happens is that I had to constantly go from these very distressing cycles of binging when I didn't feel good, which would make me feel worse afterwards, to then having to diet to undo the damage. And on top of all of that, I still had my normal worries, like what I started with, what do I do with my life, which, is how I dealt with it. So the problem was still there. I just added an extra layer or two. So that's one of that's why I feel so strongly about emotional eating, because I know that it pretty much, whether it's emotional eating, whether it's shopping, whether it's binge drinking, whether it's, video games, whatever, it has the power to hijack your entire existence just because it's so consuming. All of your thoughts start to revolve around that. And one of my favorite thoughts, one of my favorite talks, TED Talks, is called Emotional First Aid. And it's by this guy called Guy Lynch. Yeah, you've seen it. It's really, really good. And I remember someone just mentioning the name of the talk, and I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. And it's basically the idea that we as a society, any society, wherever you go, are not equipped to deal with everyday emotional, psychological hurt, everyday emotional wound. And while, most of us, I mean, many people, wherever you go, you'll have a first aid kit. And most of us know how to deal with, say, if you cut your arm, you know what to do. You will disinfect it. I mean, if it's nothing serious, obviously, or go to the hospital. But if it's something minor, disinfect it, put a bandage on it, and just leave it. But you wouldn't go and start to pick at that wound, at that hurt, at that cut, at every opportunity. You wouldn't, show it to your friend, be like, look, it's so bad, and start, reopening the whole thing. You would never do that. And yet, if you feel disappointed, if you've been hurt, if you've been dumped, if you've been, if you didn't get the job or whatever it is, do you honestly deal with yourself with this nurturing approach? Compassion, oh, it's okay. Maybe sometimes, on a good day. You would do it for your friends. You would do it for a relative, but you wouldn't necessarily do it for yourself. Like when that happens to us, and I mean, I speak, again, expert on me, when that happens, my reaction will usually be to shame myself. And it would go something like, shame, 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 right? Any other Game of Thrones fans? No, but it is true. So, you know, we just shame ourselves as if that was okay. I mean, can you imagine if one of your friends spoke to you the way you speak to yourself when you're feeling low, when you're in those states? I mean, mine would go something like this. You doing your makeup? Well, you're ugly. Just forget it. Oh, little Fadela is like prepping for her exam. How cute. We know you're going to fail. Last one. Oh, interview tomorrow. That's good. You might even fool them long enough to get a second one. Like, can you imagine if someone told you that? Like, that is just surreal. It's outrageous. It's ridiculous. Like, that would never happen, especially not from, you know, you wouldn't hear that from someone you know. But interestingly, the things that go on in our head are so much worse than anything outside of us. Like, it's amazing that the world, however messed up it is actually a kinder place than our mind, oftentimes. And that's such an interesting concept. And let's talk about inner criticism, because that's what it is. I mean, the voice of self-doubt that fuels all those thoughts, all that internal drama that keeps us prisoner when really all we want to do is just be okay. That's our inner critic. And the inner critic will basically tell you everything you suck at. It will remind you of why you're not good enough, why you're not doing things well, why you'll never do things well. And again, we just think that's normal. That's standard. And again, there's this belief that if we don't criticize ourselves, we'll become complacent and we'll stop growing. So I am not saying that you shouldn't aspire to be better. Like, know better, do better. Absolutely. But there's a fine line between, you know, criticism and constructive criticism. And the inner critic is not constructive. It's very extreme. It will focus on problems, on challenges, but it will rarely come up with solutions. Rarely. So I'd like to invite you for just a few seconds to think about what your inner critic sounds like. And if you don't have one, think about your friend's inner critic, right? You've probably heard it out loud. And just ask yourself, like, how can I tell the difference between genuine constructive criticism, like me wanting to improve myself, and that voice that just, you know, goes on and on and on in my head? Like, how can you tell? Like, what are some of the characteristics of your inner critic? Just take a few seconds, just think about that. So one of the first, I mean, I've done that in workshops where it was more interactive with less people, and we always come up with the same stuff. Always come up. It doesn't matter what kind of crowd, what ages, it does not matter. Gender, we always end up with the same stuff. And their inner critic is essentially very extreme. It's very black and white. You're either good at it or you're not. Forget it. Like, there's no in between, there's no room for improvement, nothing. It's also very mean and petty. The comments are very low sometimes. The other thing about the inner criticism is that there is no room for error. It's either perfect or it's just not worth it. Another one that always cracks me up is how it will end up comparing completely unrelated experiences. So if I went for an interview, like while I was still, you know, in university and didn't get the job, like my #1 justification for it, yeah, if you had lost weight, you would have had that job. Trust me. Like, completely unrelated. And yet it makes sense. And the whole extreme thing can also translate into you having an argument with someone or just missing your train in the morning, to just, that being evidence of how unlucky you are, and like how you'll never be, that happy person because things just keep on happening to you. So it will just like bunch up all these things. And it's also very unforgiving. It's very, very unforgiving. So one of the tips I wanted to give you today is how to navigate that inner critic, like how to work with it. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be there. It might sound differently as you get older. It might sound like different people even, but it will be there. So the first step is to become really, really, really good at noticing it. So straight away, instead of just going on autopilot, where things just happen to you without you having any sort of control over it, like get really, really good at spotting it. Like this isn't, this isn't a judgment exercise. Oh, look, that's all I do. It's just notice, no judgment. This is happening. Tomorrow I have an exam. How interesting that today I'm having all these negative thoughts, all these flashbacks from when I was 10, and I failed at this little test in school, and that's coming back now. How interesting. No judgment. Just notice it. The next step is to detach yourself from it. So understand that the thoughts in your mind are not real. Your thoughts are not you. And the worst thing you can do when you're feeling low, when you're in that level of consciousness, which is quite low, is to start to get into this power struggle with yourself. You will lose. You will always lose because that voice has got dirt on you. And there's no way you're going to, outsmart it or like out-debate it. It just won't work because you're feeling low. Like that's just how it works. So just learn to detach yourself. And then the last step is find humor. Use your sense of humor. Like there's only so many insecurities you can have. Like they tend to repeat themselves. They're quite cliche for the most part. And depending on how low you feel, they'll be more or less dramatic. So even today for me, like I'll call it out. So I have my groups of trusted friends, or like I'll call one of my sisters and I'll be like, yeah, today's one of those where, it's not gonna work. Yeah, it's just not gonna work. I don't think speaking is for me. I don't even like it. Like what am I doing just before I come here? That sort of thing. Team up with someone, team up with a friend and like support each other on that. It's not about dismissing your struggle or dismissing you not feeling well. But it's just about being able to recognize when like, look, this is completely blown out of proportion. Like just relax. Like just take a break for a second. So that's how I work with my inner critic, and it tends to work. And I mentioned earlier that these things that I'm sharing, these experiences, these challenges, these insights are not specific to students. They're not specific to young people. I work with young people. I work with people who are older. And it's the same across the board. They're different problems, but the root cause is pretty similar. It will just sound a little bit different. So if you manage to get the right formula for yourself, like you will take that with you way, way, way beyond today and this year. And the last couple of things I wanted to share with you today are just tips that have been true game changers for me. I mean, everyone is different, as I said earlier, and different things will work for different people. But maybe some of them might resonate with you. Or if they don't, then ask yourself, like, what would? And do a little bit of that homework. Don't just take it at face value. And the first one is the importance of being flexible, being adaptable. So the interesting about that one is that in my case, I thought I was super flexible. Let's be honest. I moved from this country to that country, this city, that city. I changed jobs, did different degrees. So on paper, technically, I was very flexible. But I wasn't open to questioning what was happening. Like, why did things kind of repeat themselves with different people, and that I kept on feeling a certain way? I didn't question that. I just kept on chasing, desperately believing that if I finally figured out the rules of the game, then I would get it. But it didn't work. And I once heard this sentence which made so much sense to me, which is that one of the biggest handicaps that one could have is refusing to adapt. And that really is it. Refusing to adapt it's just a recipe for unhappiness. It really is. The second thing is about the willingness to keep things lighthearted. So changing the way you think, changing the way you experience. We talked about, how to navigate thoughts and like how to not get attached to every single one of them. But there is, an additional layer, which is don't take yourself so seriously. Like, it isn't life and death. It really isn't. So again, in my very strict mind, I thought that if I was playful, if I was having fun, that would distract me from the mission. So I refused to have fun. Like, I would have fun, and then I would, guilt myself afterwards and try to make myself pay for it. Like, you could have been studying, you could have been doing this or that. I still went out and have fun anyway, but instead of enjoying it, I was feeling guilty. So have this lighthearted attitude about it. Like, you are more likely to do better at your exams, to perform better, to have better relationships when you are lighthearted. Like, get into this habit of cultivating playfulness. Like, my husband is amazing at that. Like, I could be very serious, telling him about this amazing, groundbreaking entrepreneurial idea, and he'll just say something completely goofy and just be like, you just sound so serious. Like, it doesn't sound like you're about to do something fun. And that's the sort of playfulness we want to keep. It doesn't have to be hilarious, but just get used to finding joy and humor in the little things. For me, going back to the thoughts, it's very easy to spot in which mode, how I'm operating. So I have these two categories, and maybe that will help you too. So whenever I'm analyzing what I'm going through, are these thoughts helpful? If the answer is yes, great, carry on. If they feel unhelpful, then I know I need to shift something. Something needs to change. Because when you're in helpful mode, it's kind of like being in flow. Like you're studying, you're reading something, or you're just having a conversation, and hours pass without you realizing. And that's being in flow. So that's what you want. That's what even when you're trying to solve problems, when you have big, challenges ahead, that will make you more resourceful, more flexible, more creative, more likely to come up with solutions. And the last thing is about feeling good. It is so, 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 so important. And I don't mean feeling good like, seeing rainbows and unicorns everywhere, or never feeling low again in your entire life. That's not what I mean by feeling good. Like, feeling good is about respecting yourself. Feeling good is about looking after yourself, not putting yourself last systematically. It's about recognizing that failure is just a normal part of the process, but somehow we haven't quite registered that. And it's also being okay with not knowing, not having the answers, and still to feel okay, to feel good. And it's also about, learning to love being a work in progress, and yet still remembering that you are enough. Even though you're a work in progress, you are enough every step of the way. And last, and perhaps most importantly, is to systematically choose to love yourself, self-love, over perfection, and perfectionism in general. And that is always a choice we have. Thank you. So we're going to open the floor for some Q&A. So if you have any questions for me, I am here.
So anyone who has a question, please put your hand and we'll come give you a microphone. So does anyone have any questions at all? Anyone? Yay! Well, I'd like to thank you for a beautiful speech, and I'd like to ask, just out of curiosity, why you decide to be coach, and do you remember your first motivation?
Yeah.
First moment when you thought that it can be the good job for you?
It's really interesting because I thought I would mention that in my speech, but then, decided to talk about something else randomly. No, but it is true. The coaching thing is so ironic, in fact, because that charity job I mentioned that I was so desperately trying to leave. So because I wasn't finding jobs elsewhere, so I was still there. But I relaxed eventually. I thought, look, there's no point. Like, it's not happening. I'm still looking. It's not happening. And through them, I came across coaching. So I did this life coaching course, just randomly. I thought, like, you know, the happiest people in this organization, which was quite chaotic, were life coaches. I was like, interesting. So I just did it for me, just to improve my communication skills. And then after that, we received this funding from the Evening Standard, which was to coach young people who were involved in gangs before and to help them start their own social enterprise. And because I was so cheerful by that time, they offered me the project, and I had done the coaching course. So I did that, and I did it for 2 years, and I absolutely loved it. And from there, I did more courses, I studied NLP, and that's when I started planning my exit strategy. So it's funny that the thing I was pushing away so much is actually what allowed me to discover something that I'm really, really passionate about today, which is coaching.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions at all while I'm standing here? Ooh, got one right at the back of my pictures. So we just come around to you with the microphone, so just hang five.
Hi, really enjoyed the talk. My name's Graham.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask about how do you balance responsibilities and ever-mounting responsibilities? You've got to pay the bills, you've got to go to work, and then taking that time out. Because I guess you could get quite overwhelmed, but that's because of the responsibilities, but then you feel scared to take the time out because there's all these things that you're trying to balance.
So what I usually say to people is to make it very experiential. So in my experience, both personal and working with clients, the less time you take for yourself, the more stressed out you feel, the more things pile up, the more tense your relationships are. So for me, it's one of those things where, like, if you don't have 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day, then you don't have a life. Like, genuinely, like, come on, 10, 15 minutes. But just making that a priority, and it's so interesting, because even 10 minutes of exercise, like just jumping on the rope, or meditating, or just sitting in silence, like, that will set you up for the rest of the day, and you'll be more focused, you'll be more resourceful, and likely to finish things a lot faster or come up with better ideas. But people have this belief that I'll get that break, I'll start investing in that luxury, which is called me time, when I figure this out, that out, la la la, when I delegate, when I have a new employee, when I have a new boss, when I go away to Bali for 3 months or whatever. And like, that's such a backwards way of looking at it, because you can make it happen right now. And it doesn't have to be drastic, because that's the other thing where people go wrong. I mean, you see it, you will see it very soon again, like every year, New Year's resolutions and the gym. And people go extreme. So you go from not exercising like ever to like you're at the gym every day for an hour and a half, and within 3 weeks, you quit. It's not realistic. So you're much better off gradually introducing like very small changes that are not going to make you resent the change. So the more subtle it is, the better. And then once that becomes automated, you can add a layer. Like, you were exercising, maybe you'll start meditating. Maybe you'll learn a new skill, whatever it is. But just keep it gradual, and it just becomes effortless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we have a question at the back.
Lovely. I'm coming now.
So first of all, thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, as you progress through different stages of your life, how do you deal with feelings of looking back and thinking, I thought I would achieve more by now?
Yeah, I don't have those anymore. I don't, because I realize that that's just kind of like a remnant of my old perfectionist, like very harsh self. And I know that that self was not happy, and that self didn't achieve as much as I am achieving now by being just kinder, like just more flexible, just more relaxed about things. It doesn't mean I don't get things done. It doesn't mean I don't care. But if things go wrong, I don't mind. So for me, I think that those experiences were necessary, because people can tell you, like, look, if you were just more relaxed, la la la, you would see the difference. And even with my clients, they come to me, the first time, we can have a 30-minute conversation. They don't need to pay me for that. And I can tell them, like, look, do this, 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 and it will make you happy. But what helps, and that's why those experiences, however painful they were, I mean, I was severely depressed. I had all sorts of, not so great experiences over the years. But they help you contrast. They really help you contrast, and they help you figure out with ultimate conviction, because it's self-directed learning, that didn't work. It just didn't. So the fact that you are like, I don't regret my choices, like I'm an entrepreneur today, like, yeah, I guess, if life had been different, I could be working at the UN, but I know people who work at the UN who are not happy, and I know some who are happy. So the constant is me. So as long as you make peace with that, and honestly, a little bit of forgiveness goes such a long way. Because, I was really ruthless, with every single mistake I made. But you just have to learn to forgive yourself. And usually what happens, the beautiful thing about that, is that when you forgive yourself, you have a tendency to extend the same courtesy, the compassion, towards other people. So everyone wins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the talk. How do you sort of cope with being an individual where you sort of got it all planned and you know what you really want, but you've also got the fear because you really want it, it might not happen just because. So it's almost like worried about the future that might not be, but it's just.
Yeah.
How do you stop worrying about what hasn't happened yet? But it's almost like, I don't know, you feel more in control thinking about it, that if you stop thinking about it, you just can't stop because that's how you function.
Yeah, I mean, there is a very fine line because obviously if you're passionate about something, you're going to think about it a lot. And that's a good thing, if it's something that, makes you come alive. But one thing I've learned which really helps me with that is to have that big goal, to have that clear picture of where I want to get, but I'm not attached to how it happens or how long it happens. And knowing that, I have these little internal, dialogues where it's just like, look, Fadela, that's definitely, we're launching on that date. It's going to be great. We're going to get the sponsors, la, la, la. How? This is my plan. But plans change. They're not meant to be, set in stone. So the moment you accept that, then you're okay. You don't have to worry about the future. You're doing everything you can. I mean, there are no certainties, whether it's in love, in business, in, professionally, there are no guarantees. But having that sort of mindset, and instead of feeding that fear, because essentially what we're doing every time, what if they don't call back? What if that doesn't happen? What if, I don't get there by the time I want to and it will be too late or whatever it is. Fueling those insecurities is like this massive burden that just keeps you stagnant, really. Because instead of creatively thinking of ways that are going to get you closer to that goal, you're kind of sinking, you're in place and you're sinking without even realizing it. Because in your mind, you're doing the right thing, you're worrying about it because you care. Does that make sense? Thank you. Oh. A few more?
Coming down that, yeah. Can you just pass that along?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. You said earlier when we kind of latched onto thoughts, we discussed it with our friends and suggested maybe that wasn't the best course of action. What's the line between not diving into stuff too much with your friends and not bottling stuff up?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Sorry. You said earlier about how when we latch onto thoughts, we discuss it. We tend to discuss it with our friends and go over and over it. But also, maybe it's important not to bottle stuff up. What's the line between that?
Okay, great. So as a friend, your responsibility is to kind of, that is, I mean, for me, that's a friend's responsibility. You want to create a safe space for, the friend in front of you. You want to be able to, make them feel heard, make them feel that they matter, that they're listened to. But there is, if it's a friendship, when there is that fine line when it goes from, I'm having a hard time, la la la, to then like every single day going over the same thing, and you can tell that they're just going on and it's not helping. And it's just like, okay, so is it time to let go? Can we do something to take your mind off things? So that's what I mean by that. And it's just not getting into the habit of constantly complaining. Like, I noticed that when I was working for that charity. Like, every single conversation I had at lunch, we're complaining about someone or many people. And it just, it becomes ingrained. It's like, if you're used to speaking to someone in a certain way or in a certain language, if you're bilingual, every time you see them, that language is going to come automatically. So that language of complaining, that negative language, if that's what you've been nurturing with your friends, is what's going to glue, that relationship. And that's not what we want, is it? So it's just recognizing and being honest. Like, look, I don't need advice today. Like, I do that today. I will call my sister and I'll just, I'm having a mini meltdown. I'm having a freak out about something. I'm like, by the way, I don't need advice. I just want to vent. I don't have my coach hat on. I just want my bigger sister to just be there for me, and that's it. And it's limited in time. Like, I don't, stay in it. It doesn't last for days. And then I let go, and that is okay. Yeah?
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, I find that you can get a lot of self-doubt and negative feelings from not actually having a plan in life. And how do you deal with dealing with those negative feelings when you feel like you really need to have a plan, but you haven't actually got one yet?
Yeah. So I take it into smaller steps. Usually that's what I do when I'm not crystal clear on what the plan is. So say, for instance, I knew I wanted to work for a charity, but I didn't have, my plan was apply to as many jobs as possible. So I just broke it down into, smaller steps. It's the same with my business. I didn't think starting my coaching business that I would have, that I would specialize in emotional well-being, for instance. I had no idea. So the plan was let's start a coaching business. I've done coaching for a while, and let's see how it goes. But being open to modifying it. So just try to get, a bigger picture. So if you can't even tell what that bigger picture is made of, maybe think of the feelings. What is that bigger picture made of in terms of feelings? I want to feel passionate. I want to feel excited. I want to feel like I'm interacting with people. I want to feel like I'm whatever it is. So if you don't have the tangible facts, you can always switch into feelings. How do I want to feel? And that will also give you a few hints as to where you're heading. And ask people, so many people come up to me, and I ask so many people about their experiences, especially when I started the tech startup with friends. They're happy to give you advice or just share their experience even. It's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to, say that you don't know. Because what does backfire is pretending to know, then you feel like a fraud, and then you don't do anything. That's just the worst possible scenario.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
So thank you everyone for attending today, and thank you to Fadela for such a wonderful, wonderful talk. It's been really, really inspiring, really insightful. I know I'll take a lot of things away with me. So just before I release you, we've got one little thing we want to do quickly. So before you guys came in, we pinned a couple of badges onto a few seats. So all I want you to do now is just to quickly turn around and check whether or not you're sitting on a seat with a badge or you're sitting near a seat with a badge. If you do have one, please grab it and put your hand up. It's a little green one. If you do have a badge, please put your hand up, because basically what we're going to do now is that Fadela is actually an author. She's written a book. And as a little thank you, we've got a few books of hers to give away today. So if you do have one, put your hands up, and a couple of ambassadors will come around and actually give you a book. Okay. Cheers, Mike. Okay, so stick your hand up, and don't run off anywhere just yet. So that's wonderful. Fantastic. Well, I hope you guys really enjoyed that. So basically what we're going to do now, we now have a drinks reception, so I hope you'll join us. It's going to be held up in the FWB restaurant. If anyone is not sure how to get there, you can always ask one of our lovely ambassadors who will be on the doors to direct you. And also there'll be a few things going on the reception. There's going to be a bit of music, a few photos of some of the caseless youth societies. You'll see what they've been up to. Also, there's also a board where you can write your own tips down to how to get the most out of your time at King's to swap with somebody else. There's lots of lovely things going on in there. So please do make your way up there, have a drink on us, and thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.